Hello, I'm Iona Ballantyne and this is the Scottish Football Podcast. All the news, views and analysis you need on Wednesday the 3rd of December. And what an evening we've got to look forward to.
We performed really well at Ibrox in the last fixture, so I think we'll take good confidence from that. Regardless of who the manager is, it's a very similar group of players that we're going to be facing, and we know that we can cause them problems.
Dundee United host Rangers with both sides looking for form. And there's another tasty encounter in Edinburgh.
We've obviously raised expectations and everybody's expecting us to win that, but we're not quite got the same rhythm, not quite got the same potency at the top end of the pitch, and we could do with just finding that again.
Can Aberdeen and Hearts get back to winning ways against Kilmarnock? And a struggling St Mirren head north to face a resurgent Aberdeen.
First of all, we played some really difficult away games. We have won now 1-0, show this resilience as a team and find ways to win in difficult away games. And now we want to improve our form at home.
We'll guide you through the midweek action.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sports Scotland.
Well, a very good morning to you. Joining us on the podcast this morning, former Hearts and Dundee United manager Robbie Neilson. Robbie, I need to ask, first of all, Stephen Presley spoke about changing his starting lineup after a dream. As a manager, have you done that?
I've changed it a few times after a couple of nightmares, to be honest, Iona, but never a dream. But yeah, I suppose he's looking for something a little bit different, Stephen, and hopefully it was the right dream.
Brutal, Robbie, but it has to happen. Also joined us this morning, Michael Grant, the Times Scottish football correspondent. Michael, any stories you've dreamt up?
Well, we get accused of doing that all the time, do we not? Are you in our business? Oh, no, absolutely not. I don't think my dreams would be fit for print, to be honest with you.
Well, I'm sure we'll see it one day, Michael. But there's plenty to get into with Michael and Robbie this morning. And if you're looking for a preview of Celtic versus Dundee or Motherwell versus Falkirk, you'll find them in yesterday's podcast. Now, let's start off at Tannadice, where Rangers are the visitors tonight. Robbie, Rangers' goalless draw against Falkirk on Saturday. Would you say they've struggled in recent matches?
I think there was a bit of an upturn when obviously Danny Rowe came in, that freshness that he brings in, some new tactics and things as well, but I think they'll also be massively disappointed at the weekend. But to be honest, against a very good Falkirk team, but they expect to win these home games. If they're going to try and get back up the league and challenge towards the top end, then today's a night that they've got to go and win at Tannadice, but it'll be a tough place to go.
I mean, Michael, recruitment has been criticised, but should Danny Rowe expect some scrutiny now after his result like that?
Yeah, I think recruitment is exactly the issue, Iona, and you heard Danny Rowe talking about that yesterday, that already January is looking like a big month for them, they're pretty much in double figures in terms of players that they signed over the summer that have been underwhelming so far. I mean, you would almost hold up Gassama, the one exception, as a player who's made an impact, and even he isn't guaranteed to start. So the recruitment, which of course is not Danny Rowe's fault so far, has been really, really mediocre. But yeah, I think that they're in that kind of period already that you can just sense a little bit of scrutiny and attention coming on to Rowe himself. As Robbie said, the results had been better under him. They had stabilised a bit, but the performances have still been criticised, and there was a bit of jeering and a bit of kind of low-key booing at the end of the game against Falkirk again, and that just feels like it's been the soundtrack to every Rangers game this season, or nearly all of them, because the fans have not been at all impressed by what they've seen.
It has been. It really is quite incredible. But I mean, Robbie, Danny Rowe did say after the match he's taken 13 points from a possible 15. When you hear and see that, it's not bad considering what has been happening.
It's an introduction to being a head coach in the old firm, to be honest with you. 13 out of 15 anywhere else in the world would probably be patted on the back, but as soon as you drop points, especially at home, it becomes a negative. So it's a very difficult job to have. I think like this time of year, especially the way Rangers look like they're going to have to transform their squad, is very difficult because players will probably know that they're leaving. The club will have a list of players that they want to move out, who've probably spoken to their agents as well, so the players will know. So you have that group of players that, although they're involved in the squad, aren't going to be there potentially long term. So it's a difficult period. They'll just be desperate to get to January, make a few changes, get some fresh faces in, and then take it from there.
I mean, talking about the players in the squad, Michael, Oliver Antman's now been ruled out for 2 months. Is this an opportunity to see other players come in, Finlay Curtis, Lyle Cameron, for example?
Yeah, well, I mean, to be fair to Roll, he's had problems with injuries, and that's kind of mounted in recent weeks. Cornelius and Suter are out. Mikey Moore's been out, and now Antman as well. I mean, Antman, another one who really looked impressive in his debut and has not really kind of delivered consistently since then. But better to have him available than not. It's interesting when you listen to Roll the other day. He was talking. And how many times have we heard this about Rangers, that they don't have enough kind of leaders, they don't have enough intensity from the way the team is playing, aggression. You talked about aggression on and off the ball. And that's what they need to try and get into the team. But that's easier said than done. If he's... I mean, you can't come out and just machine gun his squad, although Russell Martin did that after the opening day of the season. But he clearly believes that they need more kind of... just more players that are suited to the Scottish game. Robbie knows exactly what it takes to succeed in Scottish football. He alluded to it there. I mean, it's a hard environment, and I think, reading between the lines, it looks like Roll doesn't think he's got enough players in the squad at the moment to be able to cope at the level that Rangers want them to be coping.
Robbie, how do you get that? How do you change what is going on with the players there at the moment?
To be honest with you, it's probably the hardest thing in recruitment. You can watch games and see the quality technically of players and at times tactically, but you can't tell if they're going to be able to handle the pressure of playing in front of 50, 60,000 people week in, week out. And unfortunately, the way we are in Scottish football at the moment, that the market that Rangers, Celtic, Hearts, Aberdeen are looking at are generally lower level clubs that potentially are playing in front of 3, 4, maybe 10,000, without the external pressure as well from the media and this living in the city and things like that as well. So it's such a hard thing, you don't know what you're going to get until they get in the door, and can they stand up to, being 0-0 at half time and getting booed off the pitch? And that's the difficulty of it. So I 100% agree with what Danny Rowe's saying. They, as most teams in football nowadays, need more leaders, but the market we're in, we're not going to go out and buy a guy that's maybe 25 million, that's been the captain of Bayer Leverkusen, has played in front of 60,000. It's just not the market we're in.
Exactly, it's just not going to happen in Scotland. I mean, Michael, you spoke about the players, 2 more, Diomande and Giga, they're expecting to lose them to the African Cup of Nations later this month. As a squad, how do Rangers kind of manage that?
It's not going to be easy. Injuries come out of nowhere, but players leaving for the Africa Cup of Nations, I mean, you have to factor that into your signings in the summer. You've got to get the balance of that right. You can't have a handful of players leaving. It's only 2, but they are thin at the moment, Rangers, But again, it all goes back to recruitment, Iona, because they've had so many guys who have come into the club and not made a contribution. So if even half of the players they signed in the summer were consistently delivering for them, you could ride through these kind of issues with injuries and players leaving for the international tournaments. But they're not getting that. They're not getting that contribution from enough of the players that they brought in. Now, obviously, they've made changes behind the scenes with Kevin Thelwell leaving, Patrick Stewart leaving. They're still without a sporting director, without a chief executive. It feels like we're back to where we were under Philip Clement, where the structure is missing key components now again at Rangers, because essentially Rangers is a club that's under stress and under strain because Celtic keep winning the league. So that's a constant pressure on Rangers, and you see it in a turnover of the management and of the executives, and now you see it already, little seeds of scrutiny and disquiet about Danny Rowe, and it's a cycle that they're finding it really, really difficult to break.
And that's the thing, just making so many changes and still struggling to get it right and for things to click into place. But when you look at their opponents tonight, Robbie, Dundee United, not in the best form at the moment, 1 win in 8 games. Should they be doing better?
Yeah, I think it's quite surprising when you look at it like that. The form they're in, but Jim is probably Jim Goodwin's probably overperformed over the last few years. He got them promoted, had a great season last year. The last home game, I think, was a 3-0 defeat against Falkirk, so they'll be reeling from that. Managed to get a point at the weekend on at Killie, but probably again they were expecting to go and win in the position they were in as well. So it's been a difficult season so far. They've not won back-to-back games yet, which, if you're going to try and get into that top six and challenge for the European positions, you need to be winning back-to-back. And, Tannadice, when Rangers come to town, is always a great atmosphere, so they'll be hoping to get back on form again and get themselves picked up. I think some of the Rangers have had a few key injuries. The boy Ross Graham, captain, has been out for a long time now. A big player for him, left centre half. So, I think if they can get him back and again potentially recruit a wee bit in the January, then they'll be fine.
I need to ask you as well, Robbie, about the goalkeeping situation and Kucherenko's kind of horror show against Falkirk. As a manager, how do you manage a situation like that? I know he is out injured now, but also just as a player going through that and then having to switch goalkeepers.
Yeah, it all depends how good your number two is and how much confidence you've got in him. So a situation like that, the injuries probably came at a good time for Jim making that decision, because he doesn't have to make the big decision of changing your goalkeeper. But yeah, it was a bit of a horror show, and I think a little bit of time out for the goalkeeper and let him rebuild again, then it gives the number two a chance to come in and show what he's got. So again, if the recruitment's been good in the goalkeeper department, then they should be fine.
I mean, Michael, Dundee United, they were more like the team we expected against Killie. Do you think we're starting to see them turn a corner?
Well, I suppose any manager will seize on any kind of positivity that he can find. I think Jim Goodwin felt a bit hard done by with the refereeing decision on the penalty. I mean, it's a mad league that we have, Iona, as Robbie mentioned earlier on. I mean, one minute a manager is a peacock, and the next minute he's a feather duster kind of thing. It doesn't seem any time since we were praising Jim Goodwin and for his work at the start of this season, and then we're seeing it with Kettlewell, we're seeing it with Stephen Robinson. All of a sudden, almost as if from nowhere, clubs can just hit a bad run of form and the scrutiny comes onto them. I mean, United are still 8th, I think they are in the league. And it's still essentially it's quite early in the season. It's quite a tight division. It's not going to take much for them to get back up into the to be credible challengers for Europe again. But I think it'll be quite interesting tonight, because I think the Dundee United supporters, for all their own team's recent struggles, they'll probably sense that there's a possibility of a victory against Rangers.
Oh, very interesting. And I also like your analogy of a peacock to a feather duster.
I wasn't sure where that was going when I started that sentence, to be honest.
Very well done to be made up. Another team looking to find form is league leaders Hearts, who host Kilmarnock. Now, the goals have appeared to have dried up a bit, Robbie. How do Hearts sort that?
I think getting the key players back in again. Obviously, Lawrence was out injured for a little period, Lawrence Shankland, the top goal scorer, in Braga as well. So if they can get them back in the team and back on form, I think that there was always going to be a period where Hearts would have a so-called little wobble. They're going to lose games, and it's how they respond to that. And I think tonight's a fantastic opportunity to respond to it and get the victory and potentially get a few goals and get back on track again before they go to Celtic Park at the weekend.
And I suppose, Michael, when you're a team like Hearts at the top of the table, grinding out those midweek results can be so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And because their start to the season has been so spectacularly good, that's brought attention on them, So now, and we all knew this was going to happen, and we contribute to it, I guess, in the media. But as soon as they start to drop points, the narrative would be, they're shaking, their bottles going, the bubbles burst, and all that sort of stuff. And I think Derek McInnes is an experienced enough manager, and there's enough experience in senior positions at the club itself to know that was coming, and they would just have to ride it out and stay calm. I mean, what an incredible place Hearts are in. They're top of the league in December, So I think you have to put things in perspective, and also realise that this is a club that's growing and it's kind of thinking long term. They've got their AGM coming up on Thursday. I'm sure that'll be pretty positive and upbeat about where the finances are. But you know, our environment in Scottish football is very kind of immediate, isn't it? It's all like, well, they've not won or one win in 5 games. It's a crisis, and our crisis is brewing. I don't think Derek McInnes will see it that way, but at the same time, they do have issues. You know, the goals, as Robbie says, Braga's goals, I think, have dried up since October. I watched a game against Motherwell at the weekend. Motherwell were the better side for most of it. And I was kind of surprised by that, you know. So I do think tonight is important, the Kilmarnock game, because Kilmarnock are vulnerable, obviously. So I think Hearts do need to get the points on the board, just to keep that momentum going ahead of the Celtic visit on the weekend.
I suppose, Robbie, that's what happens when you're top of the table. With success comes great scrutiny.
Yes, it was a word there that was used by Michael, Scottish football and perspective. It's words that don't normally go together. And when you look at Hearts, 14 games in, 31 points, top of the league, like they would have bitten your hand off for that, it's the start of the season, and they've just got to try and settle it down. And Derek McInnes, an extremely experienced manager. He'll settle them down and get them ready. I think this is a massive opportunity for them tonight to get back up and running again, against a Kilmarnock team that have struggled recently. And if they can score some goals, get Tynecastle rocking again and get that confidence going to Celtic Park. So, yeah, there'll be plenty of perspective internally at Tynecastle, but it's just trying to manage the lack of it outside.
Michael, do you think teams have started to figure out how to play against Derek McInnes' system?
I'm not sure it's so much that, Iona. I just think that the form has dipped a little bit. The individual performances have dipped a little bit. You saw it a little bit with Aberdeen this last season, didn't you? With the same sort of spectacular start, but a lot of the victories were quite narrow. Excuse me, and that always leaves you vulnerable to draws. I mean, Hearts have had quite a lot of draws, and I think that's, if you're not winning emphatically, you're not scoring to build 2-3-0 leads, you're always vulnerable to being caught. So no, I wouldn't say they've been found out or anything. I mean, there's no great mysteries in Scottish football. I mean, nobody's playing anything that's takes too long to work out. You know what I mean? I think the coaches are all pretty high caliber, so they know the way a team is playing within the first 2-3 weeks. I think just listen, the Hearts were never going to keep that level of points going. That wasn't realistic. They were taking points at a level that even a strong Celtic would struggle to maintain over a season. So there was always going to be a kind of drop off in that respect. So no, I don't think they need to panic, but I do think they need a win tonight just to kind of keep the positivity going and the narrative going that they're a challenger.
I mean, in terms of Kilmarnock, they finally ended their run of 6 straight defeats with a draw with United. But for Kilmarnock, Robbie, what is not clicking for them at the moment? Because the fans have made it clear this is not good enough.
Yeah, I think that recently it's been very difficult for them. I think they actually started the season very well, into August, September. They were, I think, in the top half of the league. But I know over the summer, their youth team won the Youth Cup last year, and I think a lot of the young players get promoted. I think, potentially there's a group of them in there, the young players that are very good football players, but finding the pressure of having to perform week in, week out very difficult. So I think potentially they might look to bring in a couple of experienced ones in the January to try and bring a bit more, nous and the knowledge how to win certain games, just to see them safe. But yeah, it's been difficult. I think they were 6 on the bounce defeats. Saturday there against Dundee United kind of settled them a wee bit, but it's a difficult place to go tonight to Tynecastle. So it's been a tough period for them.
Is a peacock to feather duster how you would describe Stuart Kettlewell at the moment, Michael?
Yeah, probably, yeah. That's the best I'm going to be able to do at this time in the morning, I think. Yeah. Listen, Stuart is in that position that we've seen loads of managers in the past that it just feels that you're in a bit of a free fall. It's hard to turn that round. He'll hope that taking a point at the weekend is something that gives him a kind of foothold. But I saw him saying that he's been having sleepless nights, and that's the way it works for managers, because it's all consuming, and you can't think of anything else other than how do I turn this around. Scottish football is so unpredictable that you wouldn't rule them out going to Tynecastle and getting a victory. almost any team is capable of beating anybody in this division. But you'd probably bet against it. You would probably think that Hearts will beat them, and that just continues the negativity about Stuart at Kilmarnock. And I think there are fans that have turned against them. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Well, it is a Wednesday night in Scottish football. I suppose anything could happen. Now, finally, Aberdeen, who are moving up the league table, face St Mirren at Pittodrie. They're not playing perfectly just now, Aberdeen, but, Michael, they are improving. Would you say?
Yeah, the results are certainly improving. They can be a bit of a hard watch, Aberdeen. They've only lost twice in the last 10 games. You know, I mean, in terms of results, they've completely turned it around from the start of the season. They started with 5 defeats. They were rock bottom. They weren't scoring any goals. Jimmy Tilline's made the kind of tactical change. He's gone to a 3 at the back, and it's definitely stabilised them. They don't concede many goals, Aberdeen, and that's been the key to the kind of mini revival. It's not all working, Iona. You know, the middle to front, they're still unconvincing. You know, it's not easy to see what the kind of game plan is. But they are now grinding out results. I mean, they won with a late goal away at St Mirren. They won with a late goal away at Livingston. And they're just, you know, they're not conceding many, and it's taking them up the table. And although Europe is brilliant, you want to be in it, everything about it is great. It does cause difficulties for a squad when it's playing Thursday, Saturday, you know, and Aberdeen have had a tough Europa League group. So I think maybe Jimmy Tilline and the club will think that once they're free of Europe, the results may improve, and more importantly, the performances may improve. But like Rangers, you know, January, I think we'll need to see some additions, because there are elements of the team that aren't quite working.
We do see it year after year with Europe and how difficult that is to manage. And Robbie, I suppose for Aberdeen, it was one of those that you were almost holding your breath for them, hoping that their form would pick up for their sake, especially after last season.
Yeah, to be honest, I think it always was going to, you know, because they have got a good squad, you know, and they recruited pretty well towards the end of the window when they brought in Carlson, Armstrong and Nisbet, you know, 3 attacking players with real quality. You know, the issue when you bring in guys right at the end of the window like that is they probably fitness-wise are nowhere near where they should be, because they're potentially getting moved out from the club they're at. So it can take a few months for these guys to get up and running. Plus you have the European games in the background, so you don't have a lot of time to actually train. So you're just really playing, recover. But, you know, when you look at the squad that Aberdeen have got, you know, they would expect them to be up, definite top 6, but challenging for the European places. And I think, as Michael said, once they come out of the European competition, they'll get a chance to really build. I don't know if they really need to recruit in the January. I think one of the first things they'll probably do is move some out, because their squad's really big. And that can bring its challenges, trying to manage all the players and get them game time. So potentially a bit of a move out, and maybe 1 or 2 coming in just to bring a little bit more spark to the forward line, because I just feel that they don't seem to have an eliminator that's going to go by people, that's going to make the difference. You know, they've got some goal scorers, and they've got guys that have got, you know, technically very good, but they don't have any really that will take someone on 1v1 and break a team down. So I think potentially that is what they need.
I need to ask you as well, Robbie, in terms of St Mirren, Stephen Robinson said his side are in a relegation battle. Is that helpful for the players?
I'll tell you after tonight, to be honest with you, but it's that Stephen's done fantastically well, unbelievably well the last 3-4 seasons he's been at St Mirren. They're having a little bit of a difficult period just now, which happens for managers, you know, but he's got the experience to get them out of there, you know, and I'm pretty sure that you'll see tonight's opportunity, you know, putting a bit of pressure on the players, talking about the relegation side of things, just gets them sparked a little bit, I think, you know, and he'll be hoping to get up there. And he'll be confident getting up there and putting pressure on Aberdeen, because he knows that if he can get a good start to the game, then the crowd up there will start getting on the Aberdeen players' backs, and he's got a chance of winning. So, you know, Stephen's super experienced. I think they'll be fine. It's
a game that's actually quite difficult to call, Michael.
It is, yeah. St Mirren have got a really good record against Aberdeen. I think it's something like 7 wins in the last 11. I know Aberdeen won the most recent one, but they've always been a really difficult side for Aberdeen to deal with. You know, again, Robinson is another manager that He's proven himself in this division, but he's struggling at the moment. He's right to say they're in a relegation battle. They are. It's early in the season. Not going to take much to get out of that, but they are at the moment. And they've got the cup final coming up at the end of next week, is it, against Celtic? And St Mirren, at their best, are capable of winning that final. There's no question about it. They can frustrate and clog up Celtic, and then their own skills and qualities can come through. But for their point of view, they need to go into it with a bit of confidence and a bit of belief and a little bit of momentum. They're running out of time to get momentum, but a win or two in the remaining games before the final would do that for them.
Well, it's a very, very busy night of games. It's a very busy month of football for Scotland too. That is all we have got time for this morning, though. Many thanks to Robbie and Michael, and thank you for listening. Now, you can keep up with all of tonight's action on Sports Sound on Radio Scotland from 7 o'clock. Remember, we're here with new episodes of the Scottish Football Podcast bright and early every day. So to make sure you don't miss out, subscribe on BBC Sounds and have push notifications turned on in your phone. Enjoy the fixtures tonight. We will mull over all of them tomorrow morning. Have a very good day.
For everything you need to know about your team this season, download the BBC Sport app. All the latest news, goal updates, stats and scores, and insight and analysis. Just select your club to get the biggest stories and best content at your fingertips. What a result. Download the BBC Sport app for everything you need to know about your team this season.